She kissed me goodnight like she always did, soft, warm, familiar. Her lips brushed mine with the ease of habit, a well-rehearsed performance. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed it, but the envelope under her pillow told a different story. Lying beside me, she pretended our world was still intact, unaware that I knew the truth. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her steady breathing as she drifted to sleep. My mind raced, and bitterness curled in my stomach like a coiled snake. For months, doubts had gnawed at me, those small, nagging thoughts creeping in during quiet moments. A late meeting here, a suspicious text there, nothing concrete. Not until last week. Jeremy, a friend of mine, sent me the proof. He'd spotted her across town, sitting in a cafe with another man. She was laughing, really laughing, in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her hand rested on his wrist, her face illuminated by something far warmer than the cafe's soft lighting. Jeremy had snapped a photo and sent to me with a single question mark. I stared at it for hours that night, trying to convince myself it wasn't what it seemed. But then I started digging. The lies unraveled faster than I ever imagined. Bank statements showed charges at restaurants I'd never been to, hotel stays in the middle of the week, and a receipt for lingerie from a boutique she'd always claimed was overpriced. The final blow came when she left her phone on the kitchen counter to grab a glass of water. A message popped up from a contact labeled Claire. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." The name was a placeholder, of course, but the tone, the timing, there was no more room for doubt. I didn't confront her immediately. That would have been too easy, too satisfying. No, I wanted her to feel it, to understand the weight of her choices. So I planned. I spent days carefully laying my trap, making sure she would realize just how thoroughly I had pieced everything together. That's how I ended up slipping the envelope under her pillow tonight. Inside were the receipts, the messages, the photos, undeniable proof of her betrayal. And at the very end, a note written in my own hand. "Good night, sweetheart. I'm done being your fool." Morning came slowly. I woke before her, scrolling to my phone while I waited for her to stir. She lay beside me, peaceful, her hair a tangled mess on the pillow. She looked so unburdened, so content. The audacity. When she finally stretched and opened her eyes, she smiled at me. "Morning," she murmured. "Morning." I replied evenly. She reached under her pillow for her phone, but her fingers brushed against something else. Her brow furrowed as she pulled out the envelope, staring at it as if it were foreign. "What's this?" she asked, sitting up. "Open it." Her fingers trembled as she peeled back the flap. She unfolded the papers, eyes scanning the contents. I watched as the color drained from her face, her lips parting in silent horror. By the time she reached the end, her hands were shaking so badly that the papers crinkled audibly. "Mark," she whispered, her voice barely there. "Yes, dear?" I replied, my tone laced with venom. She looked at me wide-eyed, tears pooling. "I can explain." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that made her flinch. "Oh, I'm sure you can. Go ahead, Claire, or should I call you by your real name? Or maybe cheating wife will do." "It's not what it looks like," she stammered, tears spilling over. I stood, towering over her. "Not what it looks like?" My voice was cold, measured. "You've been sneaking around, lying in my face, spending our money on hotel rooms and dinners with another man. What part of that isn't what it looks like?" Her mouth opened and closed, struggling for words. She reached out for me, but I pulled away sharply. "Don't." My voice was ice. "You don't get to touch me. Not after this." "Mark, please," she sobbed. "It was a mistake. I love you. It didn't mean anything." I shook my head. "You don't get to rewrite the story. You made your choices. Emily, now you deal with the consequences." I walked to the dresser, picking up a second envelope. Her eyes flicked to it, her voice trembling. "What is that?" "Divorce papers." I tossed them onto the bed. "I had them drawn up yesterday. Sign them or don't. I don't care. I'm leaving, and you can explain to everyone why our marriage fell apart." She collapsed, sobbing into her hands. I felt nothing. No pity, no regret, only a grim satisfaction. For years, I had been the steady one, the loyal one, the husband who kept things together while she chased distractions. And this was my reward, lies and betrayal. I grabbed my pre-packed bag and headed for the door. Oh, one more thing, I said, pausing. I sent copies of everything to your parents. I thought they'd appreciate knowing the truth about their perfect daughter. Her head snapped up, panic wild in her eyes. Mark, no, you can't. I already did. I stepped out, slamming the door behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The world she had so carefully constructed was already crumbling, and she had no one to blame but herself. The fallout was spectacular. Over the next few weeks, her parents called me, shocked, apologetic, asking if there was anything they could do. Friends, the ones who hadn't known or hadn't condoned her actions, reached out in support. As for Emily, silence. I heard through mutual acquaintances that her lover had abandoned her the moment she was exposed. She lost her social standing, her reputation, the respect of everyone who mattered to her. Meanwhile, I moved on. It wasn't easy, but it was liberating. For the first time in years, I felt free. Her betrayal had been a turning point. It hurt, yes, but it also reminded me of something far more important. I deserved better. And now, finally, I could pursue it without the weight of her deceit dragging me down. As for Emily, she'd have to live with the consequences of her choices. And that, I thought, was the most satisfying revenge of all.